Welcome to UFOs over Pittsburgh. I'm your host, John Ventry. I'm the Pennsylvania State Director for the Mutual UFO Network. Our guests today are Rhonda, Vari, and Fred Saluga. On today's episode, we will be discussing UFOs and Psalm 101. Fred, Rhonda, let's talk about something that up until maybe a year ago, I had never heard of. And it's called Psalm 101. When I heard that, I thought it was from the Bible. Mm-hmm. you even said that to me. What is Psalm 101? You know?
But spelled S-O-M.
That's right.
Instead of P-S-A-L-M.
And it stands for Special Operations Manual, Psalm 101, Extraterrestrial Entities and Technology, Recovery, and Disposal. I'd never heard of this thing before.
I never did either.
And I thought I knew a lot about UFOs. But again, I take it back to the January issue of the MUFON Journal. Mm-hmm. This one issue, I think we've used for 4 shows now, because there was so much good information that was in this. So there's an article written here by Dr. Bob and his son Ryan Wood. Bob Wood is on the board of MUFON. And they're both, they do authentication of documents, going back to see if the paper, the type, everything on it matches the time period, the wording, et cetera, et cetera. So the opening paragraph with this, talking about Psalm 101, is recoveries of crashed UFOs involved reverse engineering. It was started by the Germans in 1936, and the United States surely began in 1941 with Cape Girardeau, not 47 with Roswell. It was Cape Girardeau in 41 where we got a craft. And they referenced the Battle of LA in 42, and Navy intelligence was involved.
They said they got 2 crafts from the Battle of
LA?
LA.
I know there was the memo by General Marshall that they said they recovered a craft off the coast of California. I don't know about 2. They were firing at one, and then they claimed that they got one off the coast. So it says here what the Psalm 101 is a standardized covert procedures to recover UFO craft and their occupants. It's a manual created for crash retrieval process rules and procedures, and it's called Special Operations Manual, Extraterrestrial Entities and Technology, Recovery, and Disposal. I had never heard of this before, so I was able to get a copy of it. There it is. There's the manual. So the way this got to us, it's interesting, and this is why there's some critics with all of this, is a canister of film, the old 8mm film. It probably wasn't even 8mm because this is going back quite a few years. It was mailed to Don Berliner's house. He's a UFO investigator, author. So he gets it, and when he develops it, he sees this manual in it. So that's why it looks like this. It's pages, photo pages. It's not the real manual. You can even on some of the pages see a guy's thumb. You could see a guy's thumbprint holding it. So that's how it went to Don Berliner's house. The Woods, along with Stanton Friedman, have authenticated it as being real. So that's how this thing came about. So I think the best thing to do with this, have you ever heard of this, Fred? Do you know what's in it? So
From what I read, there was two of the people was involved in it, Stone and I don't know the other guy.
Well, I can read. I can
Yeah.
just give you a basis of what it was involved. In April of this is dated April 1954, right? So Roswell's 47,
Right.
but Project Blue Book started in 52.
Right.
This is April of 54, and I'll quickly tell you some highlights of what's in it. He says that this retrieval process is the highest national security. It's assigned the very highest security classification. The security level is 2 points above top secret. It says that the consequences, the impact on the public would be a danger. Advanced technology recovered by the Air Force fall into the hands of unfriendly foreign powers. No information is released to the press. The official government position is that no special group such as MJ-12 exists. MJ-12 was established in September of 1947 by the recommendations of James Forrestal and Dr. Vannevar Bush. The recovery for scientific study will be recovered by any and all means necessary. The establishment of special teams, special secure facilities, secret locations, covert operations in concert with the CIA. It says there's few indications that these UFOs pose a direct threat. There's uncertainty to their motives. There's technology that surpasses our modern science. Their presence seems to be benign. They seem to be avoiding contact. Several dead entities have been recovered, records and devices. No attempt either to contact them or recover the dead occupants by the downed craft. So they haven't come to get their bodies back, to recover them. Once they're lost, it's like they cut. It's not like they don't leave any dead behind on the battlefield. There have not been any direct military action to recover their craft or creatures. The greatest threat at this time would be the acquisition of advanced technology by foreign powers, which is why we keep it secret. We can't have Russia and China, et cetera, getting their hands on this. Then it talks about the description, and they call them extraterrestrial biological entities. EBE is what they refer to these creatures are. There's two categories. Category 1 is a humanoid that could be mistaken for Oriental race. It's 5.5 feet tall, weighs about 80 to 100 pounds, similar to humans. The cranium is a little larger. The skin is a pale, chalky yellow, thick skin. Eyes are small. Actually, that when we talked about the lamb, when we talked about final events,
Right.
actually meets this description here, where it's the eyes are small and set apart, black irises, large pupils, ears are small, set low on the ear, nose is thin and long. That's the exact description of the lamb creature that Aleister Crowley called up. And no apparent hair, a thin body, muscles are well developed, hands are small, 4 fingers, no thumb. The type 2 type creature is a humanoid, but it's smaller, 3.5 to 4 feet, no more than 50 pounds. The head is much larger. Cranium is elongated skull. The eyes are more slanted, and they wrap around the side of the skull, so they can see. They have like each, 360 almost of vision based on the eyes, right? They wrap around the skull. Again, the eyes are black. There's no whites at all. Nose is small, slit-like mouth, no ears. The skin is a blue-gray, more like this guy over here. And they have no hair. The arms are much longer in proportion to the body. The hands have 3 fingers, 3 fingers and a thumb, so it would be like that.
Right.
So you have 3 fingers, and including the thumb. They have 4 toes. and they may have actually originated on different planets in the same solar system. So then they talk about security, that there has to be a press blackout, total press blackout to cover these stories. There'll be official denial that nothing occurred. They will discredit the witnesses. Witnesses will be discouraged from talking through intimidation. Doesn't that all sound familiar? Isn't that what has happened throughout the years? The government will make deceptive statements, issue false statements referring to meteors, satellites, weather balloons. I guess there have been toxic spills from trucks. Oh, saying that it's been a toxic spill and you can't get into that area. It's unauthorized. They will secure the area.
Well, that was on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Mm-hmm. They had the toxic spill.
Yeah, the toxic spill, you can't go in there.
Right.
That's all part of this manual. That's where it all comes from. The government policy is that these creatures do not exist. Then it talks about encounters initiated by the EBEs, possible contact with us at military installation. Then they talk about encounters of a downed craft where one of them crashed. That would be limited to military personnel. Any civilian witnesses would be detained and briefed. These EBEs are to be detained by whatever means necessary and removed to secure locations. Precautions would be to minimize any risk of disease. They'd be isolated. If they're injured or wounded, they will be treated with bandages and splints, but no medications, because we don't know if it'll kill them. No medications given to them. And if they die, the loss of life is acceptable, because we're trying to figure out what they are. And then it talks about retrieval and preservation. To preserve the remains in as good a condition, make photos, minimize physical contact with the creatures and cadavers, wear surgical gloves, decontamination procedures. Cadavers are to be bagged, waterproof coverings, refrigerated or packed in ice and in sealed containers. So this is Psalm 101, and now think of all the crashes that took place.
They also say in here that if one of them tries to escape, they got to kill him. They can't let him get out. Well, so they shoot him.
Okay.
But they're saying in here too, like I said, Stone and Sherman, these two guys allegedly was part of it. One of them was with Moondust, and the other one was with another group.
Moondust was 1953. So
Right.
Moondust was the start of it.
Right.
Then they developed this a year later.
And they actually brought them in, due to the fact that they could actually have telepathy with these aliens, that they could actually speak with them through telepathy, and that's why they brought them in. Mm-hmm. And it states in here about the people that they get, like, they start with them in childhood, and they work with them, and they go to a special school. And that really made me think about something, because back in a couple investigations we have done prior, and a couple in West Virginia especially, they had a special school down in Moundsville, and NASA ran it. I mean, would that have been part of this? I mean, you can't find no information on it nowhere right now. And they actually said that Bobby Kennedy came down to that school a couple of times. And they used to have military people coming in. But, and the people that are in these groups, they're actually part of a regular military outfit. But they go when they're told to go. And the military, their unit does not actually know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was Clifford Stone, right?
Right, that's Clifford Stone, and the other guy said the same thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, is it possible that, this is true?
Well, you got to think, with the Battle of LA in 42, Roswell in 47, they didn't have procedures.
Right.
They were shooting from the hip. That's why both of those ended up on the front page of newspapers, because the military actually told the press, we got a downed saucer. That's the front page. Roswell saucer. Battle of LA, right? Then they said, we got to do something about it. They involved probably the FBI first, then eventually the CIA. And they so wouldn't that happen naturally if some new event takes place? You're going to develop procedures. That's exactly what would happen.
Well, you talked about the first one. That was in Missouri, right? The first thing you're talking about, the crash at?
I don't know which crafts you're talking about. Let me just tell you about the penalties first.
Okay.
When they said that there would be severe
Right,
penalties if you breach this, the penalties were, and it's mentioned in the Army, Air Force, Navy publication called JANUP 146. Any unauthorized release of this information would fall under the Espionage Act, and you're subject to 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine.
But don't you also think that's funny because they started the extraterrestrial exposure law also?
Right, with the same espionage
Right,
laws.
right. I mean, they could hold you as long as they wanted, and they could do what they want to do with you. I mean, so that would actually fit into this here
With
too.
no
Right.
rights, no
Right.
jury,
No,
you're just held
nothing.
without
Right.
any rights. It's amazing stuff. I mean, Robert Dean, we tried to get Robert Dean to come and
Right.
speak at one of our conferences, but he's just in his 80s now, and he just couldn't make the trip. He was involved in this also.
And they say that your military records actually show nothing. It's like Stone was actually a secretary.
Well, he said that there were recovery procedures,
Right.
but he never saw this.
Right.
But he said, what you're telling me in it is the stuff we were told,
Right.
but I never saw the manual saying Psalm 101 retrieval. But he said we were told what to do these things that are in here. So, I mean, you would think, some people say it's not real, that, and like I said, the Woods and Stanton Friedman authenticated it. Some people say that it's not real, and they give all their different reasons. And but it makes sense to me that this would be what's put in place.
Well, why would somebody send a copy of this to Dawn Berlinger? I mean, why?
Well, see, that's a problem. You send it, that would be like them sending me a film or something on whatever, the real Roswell evidence or something, and say, why would you send it to me? Like, why didn't you send it to CNN, the New York Times? Why do you send it to me? So, there are issues with some of this. Well, if you really wanted it to get out, aren't there better channels to send it to than a low-level, minimally known journalist? I wrote a couple of books. You'd send it to me. Okay, now what? I'm going to break the story. Why would you do that and not take it to Fox News or something like that? So those are the type of things that come up. Why wasn't it broken in a better format? But
And they say in here also that you had Admiral Wilson, that they was talking to him about it, and he told one of the people he'd like to know about what's going on. Or can you imagine being an admiral, J2 head of the intelligence for Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon, and he's being told, we're not going to tell you what's going on.
yeah, well, they don't.
But then it's really interesting here, John, where they say the existence of a parallel government system using military personnel for its own purposes has been suspected for a long time, as illustrated in comments by Senator Daniel Ayanu or whatever at the 1987 Iran-Contra hearings. There exists a shadowy government within our own Air Force and its Navy, its own fundraising mechanism. There's where the heroin comes in from overseas. The ability to pursue its own ideas of national interest, free from all checks and balances. Nobody looks to see what they're doing.
And that is going on.
Yeah, they're running free and free from the law itself. Given the evidence provided by Stone and Sherman and corroborating evidence such as Admiral Wilson's experience, it can be concluded that MJ-12 special group projects outside the control of the regular chain of command within the military.
Yeah, I think we know, like we said with the CIA, with MK Ultra,
Right.
they were involved in drug trade during Vietnam, et cetera. They were taking that money to fund these projects.
Right, they're still doing it today with Afghanistan.
And if it's so important, you'd think we would just fund it.
Right.
Because some of the stuff they do is very important. It's
Right.
important to national security. Where do we get the money from? So it's like,
I think
you're making
too-
a deal with the devil, like
Yeah.
we said
Well,
with
yeah, but I think too, if they would bring this up, say Congress, you would have Congress saying, well, why do you need?
and then it gets to the press, and the press would condemn
Right,
what
and
you're
then-
trying to
yeah,
do.
and then you have the whole thing right there.
Yeah.
I mean, so this is part of it, I guess. But I think there's got to be a crash revival, revival.
Retrieval.
Retrieval somewhere, because there are crash ships out there.
Yeah,
And
well,
I mean,
we
you
know
know,
that, and
yeah.
they go to Hangar 18
Right.
in Wright-Patterson
Yeah,
over by Cincinnati,
Right.
and there were records that this is where the stuff is carted
Right.
off to. So what I did was, I went back to my UFOs over Pennsylvania book,
Right.
and I put a chapter in there because the last third of the book is about non-Pennsylvania stuff. But I have a chapter in here that talks about a list of UFO crashes up until 1992. And this was put together by the Phoenix Foundation. I didn't do the research, they did it. And they talk about a few different ones, and we can talk about a few of them. Aurora, Texas, 1897.
Right.
Roswell in 47, Aztec in 48. This little model here is the Aztec crash, and I'll tell you about that in a second. They say there's a second Roswell one in 49. One in Nevada, Eli, Nevada, with 16 bodies in 52. Kingman in Arizona in 53. But, I think everybody, then there's one here in 1977, April 5th, my birthday, 57, not 77, but
Oh.
April 5th. Southwest Ohio, the territory you hang out between West Virginia and Ohio
Does it
and
say where
here.
at? I mean,
It says Southwest Ohio, 11 bodies. I don't know what that one was. That's a big, it's a big deal, 11
right.
bodies.
19 what?
April 5th, 77. I don't know if you can research that a little bit, because then they give you a synopsis of
Right.
some of the better crashes. And I think everybody knows about Roswell, right? 1947. So we all know the Roswell crash. But here's one that I find absolutely intriguing. It's this case here of Aztec, New Mexico. Fred, do you remember actress Linda Darnell? You remember that from 1950s movies? She was a 1950s black
No.
and white actress. Okay, here's the story on this. Actress Linda Darnell. So you pick a modern day actress,
Right.
whoever. She goes to a journalist in L.A., Frank Scully, right?
Right.
And he's like, for example, take today's actress going to Entertainment Tonight. She goes, I got a story for you about a crashed UFO in Aztec, New Mexico. So she gives him the information. This is where it came from, a Hollywood actress. He starts the investigation. He writes this book, Behind the Flying Saucers by Frank Scully. That's the book, right? Let me put it here so people can see it. Cool cover, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the book he writes. I think it was in 1950. The crash took place in March of 1948. And it's such a cool storyline. They talk, let me tell you how the whole thing transpired, because I think that alone could probably be an
One other thing,
episode.
don't you think
Yeah,
that's
go
odd that he wrote that and then the X-Files of Scully?
They said Scully came from Vince Scully, the announcer for the LA
No, it
Dodgers.
came from him.
But that's the Scully.
Scully it
That's
came
the
from,
Scully,
right.
because everything
Right.
ties together.
Right.
So what happens here, and this is a true story, right? What happens is this guy is giving a lecture at, I think, the University of Colorado, telling the college students about this crashed UFO and all the technology that we got from it. So he leaves, and all of a sudden there's an uproar. Who is this guy? Where's the technology? The FBI gets involved. The college president doesn't have just a signed paper, doesn't really know who he is, right? So you got Frank Scully working on this thing. He's backing into it. The speaker was a guy named Silas Newton. He owned Newton Oil Company. He was like an oil baron down in the Southwest.
Right.
So he owned this oil company. So Scully tracks him down, and actually Scully knew Newton. So
Right.
once he found out who it was, he had a connection. Newton introduces him to a scientist who was called in to the crash and retrieval.
Right.
When this happened, the crash was the two UFOs. They crashed in like this, embedded a couple of feet in the sand.
Right.
There was 12 to 16 of these ETs that were dead.
Right.
But it wasn't like Roswell where it was destroyed. They had two whole craft. They had 16 bodies. This was the biggest gift to our military to figure it out. They actually punched out one of the windows on it. They couldn't get into it. They're going, where's the seams? There's no door, but there were portholes. They were able to drill through or do something, punch out the seams, put a small officer through, and they were able to open it up from the inside, and all the bodies and everything is it. But here's the thing. You're dealing with a guy who was a Yale graduate. He was highly involved in politics, I think with the Republican Party, big donor. He owned an oil company, no criminal record, no nothing. The scientist, Dr. Gebauer, right? This guy invents a way to identify the Japanese subs in World War II by the magnetic signature that the subs threw off. These are upstanding people.
Right.
I mean, this guy helped win World War II.
Right.
So now he's involved in this. Once they get involved in this, they get completely discredited.
Oh, yeah.
The FBI goes after Silas Newton. They're saying that the technology they got from the crash, because at the crash people were taking souvenirs, the soldiers, everything, and this Dr. Gebauer had a small device like a walkie-talkie cell phone thing that there was no antennas, but he believed it was a communications device. 1948, right? So they're being accused now of using this technology to scam people to invest in an oil drilling operation. 32 people invest. All 32 are making money. One of the 32 files a fraud complaint against Silas Newton. The FBI gets involved, charges him with doing a confidence scheme, even though everybody's making money.
No.
Not making as much as they thought, but they're making money. Completely destroys his reputation because he's involved in this. Our buddy...
Well, but John, look at it this way. You know, like we talk a lot of times, how many UFO investigators are dead? It's the same thing.
I know.
I mean, they will get you one way or another. I mean, if
Once you get involved in this,
Yeah,
and if you
yeah.
get too big...
Yeah, or if you find something that you're not supposed to know that they find out you know, they're coming to find you.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite quotes, it's in one of my books, Voltaire. He had said, "It's dangerous to be right on matters where authorities are wrong."
Right.
So you could be as right and say it, but the big shots, you can't fight City Hall.
And, you know, with that said, when I was doing that research on Todd Seas, I called up the FBI and I talked to a female agent. And I said, you know, I'd like to know if you guys was out there and this and that. And she says, "Sir, you don't understand. The FBI has no jurisdiction over UFOs. That is not our role. We do not investigate UFOs." I said, "How long have you been with the FBI?" And she said, 5 years. I said, "Why don't you go look at your history? You've been involved in UFOs since Roswell or before, and you're still involved right now." Well, phone went down.
Yep. Yeah, they are.
I mean, they're there.
But this is a great story, came out of Hollywood.
Yeah.
So people say, well, it's not real.
Right.
There were other cases, Kingman, Arizona, there were 1 or 2 bodies recovered, and they said they were brown, dark-skinned brown, wearing silver suits, and they have an affidavit from the witness that it was recovered. There's a 1950 FBI memo alluding to 3 saucer crashes in New Mexico caused by radar stations that brought the UFOs down. The Aurora, Texas was such a great story. UFO hits a tower and it crashes, and the people in the town give it a Christian burial. They said it was
Right.
green, size of a child. There were hieroglyphics on the crash. They buried them in the cemetery.
But you know what's really interesting too? If you had Flatwoods back in '52, all right, it crashed. Where did that thing go?
Well, no, that one took off. The second one came in and helped it, and it took off. We're almost out of time, but I want to tell you about just one more. Think about this. May 1947, Pittsburgh in Norway. Journalist Dorothy Kilgallen reports on this. Dorothy Kilgallen was tied in with Marilyn Monroe. When Monroe committed suicide, right after that, Dorothy Kilgallen, suicide.
Now, she was tied in with
The Kennedys.
James Earl Ray.
Yeah.
She's the one that
They
actually
all-
interviewed him.
Yeah, so
they're
now
all the same, yeah.
this Dorothy Kilgallen reports on this crash in Pittsburgh in Norway, 17 bodies. But my point with her is that she reported on a lot of this stuff, commits suicide right after Marilyn Monroe.
She made the statement that day that she had information that she was going to divulge.
Right.
And that night she died.
Then she commits suicide.
right.
So, getting back to Psalm 101, it makes a lot of sense. There's been numerous crashes, and Psalm 101 is real, and that's today's show.